Welcome to Sports Geek, the podcast built for sports digital and sports business professionals. And now, here's your host who understands what fans want from the big game, Sean Callanan.
Thanks, DJ Joel. I'm Sean Callanan, and welcome to episode 374 of Sports Geek. This week, I caught up with Shelly Wilkes. She is the EVP of Marketing and Social Responsibility at the Orlando Magic. My name is Sean Callanan, and welcome to the podcast. You might be listening to it on our website, sportsgeekhq.com. That's where you can find all the episodes, as well as everything else that we do around the world of sports and digital, applying our digital to dollars process. As always, you can contact me. Sean at sportsgeekhq.com is my email, or at Sean Callanan on most platforms. If there is a way that I can help you, I love working with podcast listeners. Please reach out. Quick travel tip before I jump into this episode. If you listen to this upon release, I will most likely in a plane or an airport in some mean on my way to Detroit for the NFL draft, working there to capture some content for the NFL AU and Z channels. And then a couple of days after the draft, I'll be in LA. So if I'm in your part of the world, whether it be Detroit or LA, please reach out, Sean at sportsgeekhq.com. I really enjoyed this chat with Shelly on her career journey and taking on those opportunities that were presented in her career. So please have a listen to my chat with Shelly Wilkes. Very happy to welcome Shelly Wilkes. She's the EVP of Marketing and Social Responsibility at the Orlando Magic. Shelly, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Not a problem at all. I always start my podcasts trying to understand the origin journey and how people got their start in sports. What about yourself? What was your first foray into the world of sports business?
Yeah, it's as many people's paths, probably somewhat winding. I was an athlete in high school and was fortunate enough to get a scholarship to play volleyball at the University of Central Florida in Orlando. While I was playing volleyball, I didn't honestly know what I wanted to do with my life. I went to school originally to be a high school algebra teacher. That was like my goal. As soon as I got into Calc 2, that goal quickly changed. Could not pass that class, and so changed my major to general business. But while I was playing, I didn't really have a necessary plan, and I didn't have a lot of time to kind of figure that out as a collegiate athlete. So I was fortunate that while I was in my senior year, the UCF DeVos Sport Business Management program was actually starting with Dr. Richard Lapchick at UCF. And so I was fortunate enough to meet him in a sports marketing class I was taking the fall semester of my senior year. And really, once our paths crossed, I found that was kind of what I wanted to look into. That was the path I wanted to set my sights on, and was able to get into the inaugural class of that program at UCF. And through the program, great partnership with the Orlando Magic. The DeVos family is the ownership group of the Orlando Magic, and really put up the endowment to start the program there. And so through those relationships is really how I got started on my sports journey with the Magic. I worked game nights there and game presentation. And I remember distinctively thinking, this is somebody's job. They get to do this really cool stuff at an Orlando Magic game. Somebody gets paid to do this. And I was like, this is what I want to do. Obviously, going into an NBA franchise, there was not a job open at the miraculous time when I graduated from graduate school. And so I started at a small sports marketing agency in Kansas City. And I had an internship there for 3 months. But shortly after that, the Orlando Magic called and said they had a role in the ticket sales department. And so I drove back across the country and started with the Magic in 2004 as a group sales coordinator in ticket sales. And so I was just really fortunate to have built a lot of relationships through grad school and through that game night role that they thought of me when a position opened up.
And so it's a common origin story of making those networks, but then just getting that foot in the door. And a lot of people do in that sales space. So your early career at the Magic was in group sales. in that group account executive, but then also then you sort of moved into that game presentation piece, which you'd done a little bit in sort of volunteering and internship. Was that a conscious decision to, as you started to learn the insides of the business, to say sales is a really good tool, everyone should learn it because we're all in sales, but then moving into that game presentation, was that something you wanted to do? Because that was a big part of your early career at the Magic.
Yeah, again, it was really, I wanted to be on the marketing game presentation side. That's honestly because I had that experience of game nights, the excitement, and honestly, some of it, even on the group sales side, for anybody that works in professional sports, you're getting the opportunity to have these experiences with fans and give them this really cool opportunity to come on the court, whether it's high-fiving a player or singing the anthem. All of that part was game presentation as well. And so through group sales, I was getting a lot of insight into how all of that worked. And so just through some natural attrition of somebody moving on to take another role, because again, of that relationship building and the networking and kind of doing a little bit more probably than what my job called for me to do, I was thought of as a person that could take on this role in the marketing department under game presentation. And, I often tell people, specifically starting in their career, that I was in sales. And so I went, my first year I was a coordinator. My second year I actually sold group tickets and did quite well. And financially at 24 years old, it was a really great salary in sales. And I took about a 60% pay cut to go into marketing, which was really the passion that I really wanted to build my career around. And I'm so thankful that I did. It's really been an awesome journey, and I'm so fortunate to have been able to do what I've done. And so, yeah, really grew up with the Magic and the live entertainment, production, creative development space before kind of taking my next leap in 2016.
Yeah, so I mean, that game presentation piece, and the NBA is known for it worldwide, and that there is that very much you're looking over your shoulder. What are other NBA teams doing? What are other sports doing to fill timeouts, to what's halftime look like? That must have been an exciting time to keep building, and I guess, like you said, connecting that sales piece to go, it's great, we've sold them the ticket, but then that baton is handed over to you and that game presentation crew to go, no matter what is happening on the floor with the team, and you had some success and some non-success in that time, but you want to make it a fun experience, at every event.
Absolutely. And that's really kind of how we still think about it. We think about the NBA game experience is kind of a dinner and a show, right? It's about the entertainment experience, the memories you'll take away with the people that you attend with, and it's specifically in our down years. So I've been with the team for 20 years, and so I've seen the highest of highs and performing extremely well on the court, and selling tickets wasn't that difficult, and to the times where we're not performing as well on the court and where we really are leaning heavily into that fan experience. And we often say, we don't really care if you remember if we won or lost. We care if you remember what you experienced while you were there. And that's really what people walk away with. They walk away with those memories with their families or their friends. And that's really what we're there to do when they saw themselves on the Jumbotron or whatever that main experience or their food and beverage experience might have been. So that's really the excitement and joy that we're able to bring. And it's really how we still think about it, no matter how good we may be on the court. Those timeouts, that halftime, the pregame entertainment, we think about it from the time you park your car to the time you leave at night. What does that whole unified experience feel like for you? And we hope you walk away with the most positive memories that you'll come back.
I mean, one of the things I like watching the NBA from Australia and opening up League Pass is you do get to see all the game entertainment and some of the things, whether it be, T-shirt cannons or dogs jumping through hoops and all the different halftime shows. So it does give you a little bit of feel. It's not the same as being there, but it's always good. I'm always looking at it, from a sports business perspective and seeing what different teams are doing. But so you sort of mentioned there, 2016, you made the move. And I sort of want to dig into that because, when you went from ticket sales to go, hey, I want to go into marketing, and it was a bit of a one, following your passion and following what you wanted to do, stepping up into that president role for the Lakeland Magic, who are in the NBA G League. How did that come about, and why was it an opportunity you wanted to tackle?
Yeah, so the last year before that all happened in 2016, I had been we moved into a new building in 2010, so had that experience. We went to the NBA Finals. 2016, I was able to produce a game in both Brazil and London as part of the NBA Global Games. And then I was on the production team for the NBA All-Star Game in Toronto. So I had all these really amazing live entertainment production opportunities. And I kind of thought my career would continue to grow specifically in that space. Then towards the end of 2016, the Orlando Magic was looking to relocate our G League team, which is the minor league of the NBA, closer to Florida. We had a relationship with the Erie Bayhawks, which is in Pennsylvania, for any of your non-American listeners. And it's not the best place to travel during an NBA season, which is quite cold, lots of snow, very difficult. So from a player development standpoint, we weren't really utilizing at the G League the way that it's intended to be used. So we were looking to bring that team closer. And I'll never forget it. It was a preseason game. I'm on the court getting ready for the game to start. Something had just happened technically, like was not working well. And we probably had 4 minutes before tip off. And the president of our team of the Orlando Magic came to me and was like, hey, we have an opportunity that you may want to look at coming up. And I was like, okay. He's like, we're bringing the G League team here, and I'd really like for you to interview to be the team president of that. And again, 4 minutes before the game is about to start, something crazy is going on. And by the way, I'm 8 months pregnant at the time. And so I was like, can we talk about this tomorrow? And so through that, them really coming to me and saying, this is an opportunity. Another person, Jay Riola, who maybe you've spoken to on our team, had actually really led the RFP process to bring that team locally to us. And, he had done a lot of the legwork, and I heard ancillarily what was happening, but wasn't super involved at all. And so when they asked me to kind of go through the interview process, I really dug in, was offered the position in November of 2016, and announced the team on December 13th of 2016. And I had my first child on December 26th of 2016. So the decision process was intense, right? Lakeland, for me, we're based in Orlando. Lakeland is about an hour and 15-minute drive there and back. So knowing I would have a new baby, I would have to be commuting because my husband worked out of Orlando. Didn't make sense for us to move at that time. And so it was a lot that went into it. But there was a huge belief in me from the organization. Being a female, sometimes there is the sense that if you're going to start a family, these opportunities aren't going to come. And I'm so thankful to work for the Magic and to have the relationships that I've had, because there was no hesitation. They knew I was taking my full maternity leave, and that when I came back, I would be 2 feet in and we would build this thing from the ground up, which is what we did. And I luckily had a great partner. I brought in a VP from the Magic who really helped me start that team there, Michael Rodriguez. And he was just a great partner. And so the two of us kind of built our very small team. We had about 14 staff members, the Orlando Magic closer to 250, 300. And so we, that minor league grit really is what came out. And it was the most fun. Did that role for about 3 years. And until COVID hit, really is when I transitioned back. And it was an experience of a lifetime, and I'm so thankful to the Lakeland community for welcoming us, and to the staff that I was able to work with while we built that team there.
So that's a terrific story, but also I think that also when the opportunity came 4 minutes before a game, you're in game night mode. Everyone's worked in on a game day. There's so many things happening. It's the ultimate spinning plates. Do you think that game presentation, that live entertainment piece that you've been doing, which is lots of planning, the ability to firefight and solve problems on the fly really quickly and being adaptable, helped you one be identified, and again kudos to the Magic to identify you, but then also to go into that role, because when you, like you said, going to a G League team, you don't have the same resources, and you sort of become a chief everything officer in trying to get everything done, but also delegating to the right people. Do you think that live game day experience, which can be really hectic and overwhelming if you don't understand the game, do you think that actually gave you a good grounding to manage all of the competing priorities and all the different things that were thrown at you as president of a G League team?
Yeah, for sure. I think that, my personality in general specifically kind of suits well to that high stress environment. I don't typically get very stressed out. I am pretty even keel. I don't understand why people yell and get angry when things are happening in a live production setting, because there's nothing you can do except like, okay, how do we solve the issue at hand and move on? And so, yes, I definitely think that just that kind of personality type of things are going to come up every single day. We're going to have to solve a lot. And in that role with the G League team, I kind of had to be the face too of the franchise. So I was doing a ton of media. I would meet with and present to any group of people. So if there was a Kiwanis club, I was going. If there was a Rotary, I was there. If there was a board meeting for some nonprofit, I'm telling you about the Lakeland Magic, prophesizing why you should come and be a part of what we're building here. So it was a huge growth opportunity for me, a lot of learning around leadership, staff development, leaning into people for help. So thankful from the Orlando Magic side. We had a great resource in the Orlando Magic. There were shared services of certain capacities that really took a huge burden off of what we had to do at the team level. And so I think that just all of those things and really relying on my staff to do the jobs that they were hired to do. We brought in a fairly young team, as you can imagine, in a minor league sport, and everybody had to grow up. Everybody had to be professional and deliver upon what their role was. And it was a great learning opportunity for everybody. We had a lot of success there. I'm so thankful that it happened. That team has recently moved and relocated to a city called Osceola County, which is right next to, it's about 25 minutes away from where the Orlando Magic play at the Kia Center in Orlando. So it's a much closer and a much different kind of audience and experience. So, but very thankful to the Lakeland community for welcoming us. But it was certainly a lot of hats, a lot of fires to put out, lots of conversation, just to build a brand in a brand new city that had historically had a lot of unfortunate turnover in minor league sports. And so really trying to build that trust again around why they should support this team and why this team was important to the city.
One of the things I wanted to, explore, because you'd been at the Magic and a lot of the NBA teams, and like you currently do now, we'll get into it, have deep ties in the community. But when you move to a minor league team, it is such a focus because you don't have the big star player coming in to fill the seats, and it's a real community-driven thing. Was that something, you said when you went to lots of board meetings or lots of presentations, was that something that I guess got reinforced for you, the importance of connecting a team to the community when working at G League level?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's one of our core values as the Orlando Magic, which filters through all of the organizations that we own, is community. And it is so important. And I still believe that it's kind of the underpinning of why we're successful in Orlando is because of how ingrained we are into what we do community-wide. And so going into that new city, it was very much that. So I required every single one of my staff had to serve on a nonprofit board. And that was really about leadership development for them, but also having a seat at the table in conversations with other business leaders. We also volunteered every single month at a nonprofit organization throughout the city. And so we would pick a new one every single month. We would go learn about that organization, and then we would show up. We did tons of youth basketball activations throughout the community. We showed up at grassroots events or community events. And so being present is probably the key, but being present with intention and not just being there, right? And making sure that we're actually having an impact, doing something that's meaningful, and showing that we are committed to the work and not just doing it because we want people to buy tickets. Because really, that wasn't what it was about. It was about being ingrained and being an important part of the Lakeland community.
And as someone that has taken the opportunity, at that minor league level to take an expanded role and to learn an expanded role, and you spoke about the Rockstar team that you had that were young and hungry. Like a lot of sports grads will look and see an NBA team and go, "Oh, I want to work at the Magic," but the scope of work and the capacity that you can do and the amount of roles you can learn at a minor league level because of limited resources, you can really, one, step up your game and learn a lot of things that can, I guess, further you on in the career. Is that how you took it, and how overall your team sort of took on that opportunity?
Absolutely. So I would say for everyone that we brought in, so for instance, my game presentation director that I brought into Lakeland was actually our game presentation intern in Orlando. And she is somebody that I got an opportunity to learn. Her name is Erin Hayes. She's actually now in Boston at the Garden there, and she's doing great. She's thriving. But in that role, she was not narrowly focused on just game presentation, right? She got to take on and understand what was happening in the control room. She got to do all of the community work. She had all these different hats that she was able to wear and learn a breadth of knowledge. Where if you do stay with an NBA team or another major league sports team, typically our roles are somewhat siloed, right? They're very subject matter focused, which is not a bad thing either, right? You need people to really deliver on those jobs at a high level. And it's just a different beast, right? It's just such a different world. And so in the minor league system, everyone is wearing different hats. Your role may be social media or marketing or content creation, but you know what? There may be some day that you are helping in the concession stand, or you're putting on a mascot costume, or you're helping on a partnership pitch, right? So it's all these different pieces that you're getting to learn. And because we were so small, everyone got to learn and understand and hear the other parts of the business, which doesn't also always happen because you're kind of sitting in your different areas in a larger sports organization. And so there was a lot of just learning by osmosis also that was able to happen because we're in an open office floor plan, and you're just hearing the dialogue around what's happening in ticket sales or partnerships or operations, and can get a better understanding about how this whole thing fits together, and how we become successful as a team.
Definitely. I mean, yeah, minor league, it's there to develop the players, but there's just as much, it's a real opportunity to develop from a business point of view, whether it is, I'm always advising young grads to, there's so many opportunities at participation level, at community orgs, where you do get that bigger scope. And then you will have had some of those reps to be able to apply when you're on the bigger stage.
Yeah, and just as an example, specifically on the basketball side, we have a ton of leadership. So the general manager of the Lakeland Magic, when I started, we started together, was Anthony Parker. The assistant general manager was Adetunji Adedipe. And so kind of the three of us really started, those two on the basketball side. They brought in some interns, they brought in some other people. Today, I'm back at the Orlando Magic in this EVP role, which is certainly an elevated role for me. Anthony Parker is now the general manager of the Orlando Magic. Adetunji is the assistant general manager of the Orlando Magic. The intern that Adetunji hired in Lakeland is now the assistant GM for the Osceola Magic in the G League. And so we really do use it as that pipeline builder. We try to use it as an opportunity for people to learn and grow. And then it's a great talent resource for us from an Orlando Magic perspective. And not to mention the on the court piece, right? We now have 3 two-way players on an Orlando Magic roster that can really develop court playing time in Osceola. And so it's such a great integration. And that team is part of the Orlando Magic team on the business and basketball side. So it really does help people learn and grow. And to your point, it's a great place to start your career. You will learn the most about the sports business, certainly working in a minor league sport.
So if we sort of calling minor league sports a career accelerator, you went through that 4 years, and I don't know if we put it in sports business years, but you learn all these different parts of the business and probably got a bit of a wider appreciation of the Orlando Magic business as you're interacting. You've come back into the business as in a marketing and social responsibility role. And like you said, sort of, again, enabled you to jump the tracks and change tracks and those kind of things. What was what's the remit of your role now?
Yeah, so when I left Orlando to start the Lakeland Magic, I really owned the areas of the business that I oversaw were live entertainment, so all the in-game experience, content, and creative development, so all of our creative services. Today, I oversee live entertainment, content production, social media. So that whole group, all of our graphic production, which is our creative services group, all of our events. So we produce about 200 events a year for the Orlando Magic. So that group, all of our community impact and external affairs. So we call it social responsibility, is really our on the ground efforts of in the community doing the work. And then we also have the Orlando Magic Youth Foundation, which is our 501c3 nonprofit, which is really a grant giving group of the organization. And then I also oversee all of the marketing and brand strategy for the organization. So much greater breadth. I obviously have great leaders over each of those areas, and a pretty awesome team that's managing kind of their day-to-day roles under those areas. And so we've been extremely fortunate to build a really solid culture and teamwork environment. People thankfully love what they do. They love being a part of the Orlando Magic. And I think that the team does a great job of keeping people excited to go to work every day and proud to be a member of the team.
So so one of the things this year has been the 35th anniversary, and as a marketer, it must have been, it's terrific to have those, real tentpole in historic pieces in, what is still a relatively young franchise when you look at other NBA teams, 35 years. Like, what were some of the focuses for the 35th year?
Yeah, so the 35th anniversary really gives us that point to look back and also kind of get excited about the future. And so we had one of the best parts about doing an anniversary year for fans is that you get to bring back one of your uniforms. And so that was kind of the first thing that we did, is we launched a classic uniform. We call it the T-Mac uniform because it's the most iconic uniform that was worn while T-Mac played for the Orlando Magic. And so that classic uniform has certainly been one of the more exciting pieces of it. There's also just in the world of sports brands right now, and probably more fashion in general, there's a lot of nostalgia happening. And so people have a lot of a nostalgia for our original marks and our original logo. And so we were able to really play into that this year around those classic nights. The other big piece that the anniversary year allows us to do is bring back former players. And so when we launched that uniform, we had Ryan Anderson in hosting an event for us. We did a ton of stuff with T-Mac throughout the year. And probably the biggest thing that we did this year was we retired Shaq's jersey. And so we were the last team that had not retired his jersey yet that he had played for. And so we were excited to be able to raise his number in the rafters, and think the fans really, really enjoyed that opportunity. It was a moment in my career that I'll never forget. And for anybody listening, Shaq is exactly what you think he is. He is the kindest, most gracious, wonderful person. I will tell you, it was interesting to be kind of in his presence around lots of people. He would stop, shake everybody's hand, talk to them, be patient. And I'm the one that's like, we got to go. Like, we got to go. So he was awesome. And it makes sense why his career has gone on so long and he's been able to do so many things. But a lot of those former player engagements were really cool to just bring them back for the fans. And then the other thing that we did this year that I think people have really bought into is we brought back our original theme song. And we really started doing it over the last year and a half, but we really heavily pushed it this year. We did a remix of it that makes it a little bit more modern. And so every time we win, we have this whole play the song culture that's happening right now, specifically on social media. And it's been a lot of fun for the fans, staff, our players to get behind and just really leaned into the anniversary. And the great thing is that's not going away. That tradition is going to carry on. So anniversary years are always fun because you get to do so many look backs and bring back certain players. And it just is a lot of celebration. And it's even more fun when you're winning and you can start to build towards the future.
It does show the maturity of a franchise when you can have classic jerseys and retro is a thing, and definitely nostalgia marketing is something that just everyone seems to be tapping into. But when you've got a really good, rich history of these moments, or like you said, the particular jersey or a song, like with some of those things brainstormed by your team, going, "Hey, these are the good things," and then how much of it was that social listening of, a post gets put up and they're like, release the jersey, we want the jersey back, or we want the song back. Where's the, is it chicken or egg? Was it your team, ideating what would work, but then also listening to the fans?
Yeah, we probably started everything for the 35th anniversary about 18 to 24 months beforehand. Working with the NBA and Nike on uniforms, that's kind of your first point. And you need a 2 to 3 year window to choose your uniform for that year. So we had done some social listening by not telling people what we were doing. It was a couple years before the anniversary year, but we put out like a post that was like, hey, what's your favorite jersey in Magic history, right? So we just wanted to get a pulse of what people would say. We had historically only ever done our very original uniforms as our classic. And so we wanted to change it up this year. And there was a lot of commentary on social media saying that T-Mac jersey's fire, that let's do that T-Mac jersey. So just through some of that listening, we knew there was some support there to utilize that uniform. So that's kind of where we started. So we were going to build around that look of the uniform. And so then after that, we did do a ton of ideation just as our team and talked about different content series we wanted to do, talked about how we would launch into the 35th anniversary, what kind of events we wanted to host, what players we wanted to bring back. And then we'd actually been working on this jersey retirement opportunity for a couple of years as well. You know, we needed to get a lot of buy-in from our internal leadership, our ownership group. We had to get everyone on board that because this is the first jersey we'd ever retired and it's a different philosophy, right? How do we get everyone to on board to that? So it's a multi-year process to get us to where we actually celebrated throughout the year this year, but a lot of internal dialogue. And then I would say we definitely invested in things like Play the Song. We spent the time to do it. And, you know, you never know if things like that are going to take off or if it's just going to be like a thing we do as the team. But we're thankful that that thing took off to the point where we now have opposing team players saying, I don't want to lose just because I don't want them to put some meme up about us losing to them with that song. So it's been a lot of fun just to get behind some of that stuff.
And I wanted to sort of touch on the Shaq retirement. It must have been a bit of full circle for you, you know, going back to your game presentation, Origins, and setting that up. Like one of the things, there's a bit of debate on when is the best time for those kind of events. Is it a pre-game thing? Is it a halftime thing? And now there seems to be a trend, at least in the NBA, and sometimes doing it after the game, so you've got a bit more time to breathe and don't have that. I guess that pressure of, we've only got 16 minutes here and we're trying to rush, which is a really important moment for history. Was there some strategy around that and you know, celebrating Shaq around that retirement?
Absolutely. And I would say, like, in general, the NBA would prefer you not to do it at halftime. There's a lot of teams who only want to do it at halftime. The problem with halftime is that you have a very finite amount of time and you're always going to go over, and then it's going to create this 30 to 45 minute delay of the game. And so we knew that was, with Shaq, not going to be feasible. We were not going to get this ceremony in 15 minutes. He had a lot of family and friends in. We knew we wanted to have Penny there. We knew we had, you know, a lot of moving pieces. And so we were also on TNT that night, and TNT had a double header. And so we could not do halftime because that would have not worked for national television. So we chose postgame for a lot of those reasons. And it really allowed us to take the time. It allowed us to take the time and celebrate it, have multiple speakers come in. We'd probably make it a little shorter, but I think everyone stayed. Everyone was so thankful. He was so gracious and so thankful that it happened the way it did. And we were able to bring in a lot of his family to be a part of it. And so, yeah, I think there was a lot of strategy around the win. Halftime is certainly the more pinnacle time. It's just a very challenging thing to pull off from a production standpoint, specifically with how big he is. And so we knew that just wasn't going to be feasible. And so we had announced all game before the game that this was going to be happening post game. And I would say a majority of the people stayed in their seats for the post game ceremony.
Yeah, and I think it is. I mean, I think it's an ideal time too because, you know, there's all these things you have to do at halftime. You know, whether it's going to the restroom, get some food, and, you know, and if you're a massive Shaq fan, you're like, well, I want to be there to celebrate his career and take it all in. And then also you've got, I guess, that wider canvas that you can be sharing online, capturing all that social content for, you know, the thousands and thousands of people that weren't in the venue at the time that want to celebrate it. So it does give you a lot more to, you know, really celebrate that moment and again, create more of those history moments for the Magic.
Yeah, and then just a little logistical issue. There's also no way from where our court is and where the banner would hang to actually raise it into its hanging spot. So we had to hoist it where we did just for the ceremony. And then after everyone left, we moved it into its correct spot. So like, there's all these challenges that pop up as you're producing this thing of how is this actually going to work? And so we're happy of how it all planned out and happened. And to your point, we had probably the biggest day, night, etc. we've ever had on social media with just the Shaq jersey retirement.
So one of the things you did say is part of your role is social responsibility, and we're seeing more teams really lean into that. I mean, they've always done a lot of great community work, but it's more how do we double down on that, but then also how do we connect that with our partners and align with our partners? You know, famously at Angel City FC, they really put social and their commercial together and say it can drive. Is that something that you're looking to do with Magic Partners? Say, look, we're doing these great things in the community. We can help you connect with the community, and we want you to be part of the journey.
Absolutely. So all of our major partners, we try to have what we call a cause marketing initiative. And that's really where our partners come alongside of us and we come alongside them and we do something together that's unified. So one example is Advent Health is one of our major partners. We're called Champions of the Community Partners. And so they're a significant 35-year partner with us. They do multiple community initiatives. One is a court refurbishment project that we do every single year where we go into the community and we refurbish a community outdoor basketball court, one that's probably not being used or isn't safe for the youth that are supposed to be using that court. We come in, we refurbish it, paint it, make it so it's safe, replace hoops, baskets, etc. And then we typically do something, they're usually tied to a community center. So we'll do a teen learning center or a gaming center or a computer lab as part of that project. And then Advent Health also, actually tomorrow night, we have a Her Time to Play basketball clinic where it's really about getting more youth girls playing the sport of basketball. And so we have about 250 girls coming out to our training center tomorrow for that event as well. So we have multiple partnerships like that really help us amplify why we're here, right? Why does an NBA franchise exist? And at the end of the day, sure, it's about the competition on the court, the global brand of the NBA, and all of those things are certainly very important. But to have an NBA franchise in your city, it's a unifying fixture. It's the one thing that, sports, right? It brings everybody together, regardless of background. You're all cheering for the same thing, or you're cheering against something, but it's still a unifying experience, right? We're not fighting necessarily with the way we are in some of the other areas of our lives right now, where sports really brings that experience all together. And one of the ways that we think we can do that is through all of our community initiatives. And that really comes in arena to the game experience as well. So we host a lot of what we call Unity Nights, where we are bringing Black History Month night, or a Noche Latina presented by Pepsi, or we do a Seats for Soldiers night with L3 Harris. So we do a lot of different cause marketing initiatives around our game nights as well. So we find it to be extremely important. It's very kind of core to who I am. It's core to who the Orlando Magic are and to who our ownership is as well. And so that's been instilled in all of us, and it's kind of how we operate.
And definitely, I mean, that's the selling point for sports. You've got that great connection with your fans and the community, and you effectively can, bring to the table a cause activation team that can help drive it for, whether it be, like you said, Advent Health or another provider says, we want to be showing that we're doing something. It's like, well, we've got a team ready to roll it out. What do you want to do? And is that sort of how those sort of conversations start with your partners to say, what do you want to do? We've got this canvas of, game nights and activating on game nights, or we can go into the communities. It's sort of, that's how it starts. And as your relationship with the partner develops.
Yeah, so absolutely. So the partnerships team, we have a great relationship with. Actually, my director of social responsibility, she was in the partnerships team. And so she has a very good sense of where opportunities exist, and she has the right language. So if they're pitching a new partner, we have the opportunity to come alongside them and talk about ideas. What are things that, one, we think is important and valuable that we're hearing from community partners that's needed within Central Florida? And then how can that partner come alongside of that initiative and be impacted. So some of it happens in the pitch process. So like understanding what's important to that organization or that company. And then some of it happens organically through a partnership time with us. So it just kind of depends. So Kia is a great example. Another fun project we did this year was change the name of our building to the Kia Center. And so Kia has an amazing platform. They obviously have vehicles. So we had something already happening around the time that they were changing the name, where we do this big give, where we bring in, partner with Habitat for Humanity, and we build that house with one of our partners. And then we surprise that family during the holidays. And so one of the surprises that night was they also got a Kia vehicle at the game. And so some of them happen organically based on things that we are already doing. Some of them happen because there's an aligned value system. And some of them are new ideas. It's a new partner. OUC is a great example, which is our power provider here. And they like to do tree planting. And so we figured out a way that we could utilize game experience, and also how do we utilize how many points we score in a game with how many trees we plant in the off season. So it just kind of depends on what the partner's looking for, what their goals are, and how we can kind of mesh the two together.
So some of the stuff we've discussed is really the things that you can plan and you can control. It's 35th year. You're going to have a Shaq retirement, all of these plans. We're recording this, a week or two before the playoffs start, and it becomes there's less plans. But how do you tackle that as a marketer, as a team, and you've got your content team, and you want to take advantage of those opportunities, because you really need to have that agility and nimbleness to go, this is a thing, how do we do it? So how do you, I guess, as a leader and, leading the team, what does, playoff themes and being able to take on those opportunities, what does that look like for you, as you head into the playoffs?
Yeah, so we're very flexible. And so we kind of change direction. We have a strategic plan prior to going into any season, and we leave room in there for things that are going to come up, right, that we didn't know about. So Kia Center is a great example. We did not plan to be changing the name of the building in December in the middle of a million games, but we had a team together to make it happen. Going into the playoffs, we've built a campaign, which we're not launching until we actually clinch a playoff spot. And then you have multiple paths of planning, right? So we're in the 4th seed today. We need a win tonight. And we need some other teams to lose to clinch a 6 or better spot, but there's still a chance we could be in the play-in. And we're just excited as the team that we're going to be in the postseason, right? We have a lot of excitement, a lot of momentum as this team. They're young, they're hungry. We see a long road of success ahead of us. But as marketers and as my team is thinking about this, right, we have a lot of creative pieces that have to be developed. We have a lot of content that has to be developed. So we are planning as if we're in the playoffs, but we also have a secondary plan of a play-in. So we have 2 courses of action currently being developed. Today, a little bit more strongly than yesterday. We were trying not to talk about the play-in, but we'd lost last night. And so hoping for a win tonight so that we can kind of go all in on the playoff piece. But yeah, you have to just be ready for all of it. It's not the most ideal situation, but it's also very exciting to even be in the conversation, to be where we are. I don't think if you asked people at the beginning of the season, they would ever think the Orlando Magic would be sitting in the 4 seed with 3 games left in their season. So we are thrilled to be where we are, and we're just hopeful that, the team on the court continues to win, and we make a long playoff run and then set ourselves up for success into next season.
Yeah, I think that's the thing a lot of people don't understand, especially talking to marketers that aren't in the world of sport, that they don't understand that, you've got effectively a choose your own adventure marketing plan where you don't get to choose, right? And it just, you've got to come along. So how do you, set the culture for your team to be able to, one, take on those opportunities or to come up with that idea and say, I think this is a thing, or, one of the things I loved recently, Aussie Joe Ingles taking the charge, pointing to the bench and, everyone rallying around him, because he's just that kind of guy. But how do you get your team ready to say, find these, in the same way that the coaches are prepping a player for a big shot, you're prepping your team to go be ready to take that shot, and like have that agility to approve it, get it out there, get it in the hands of your fans as quick as possible.
Yeah, so technology-wise and resources. So we have invested heavily in content creators. So we have that particular shot, for instance, was taken from one of our content creators, TJ, who happened to be on the court. He mostly shoots vertical video for TikTok. And he was the guy that was there to capture that specific shot, right? And we do put our content creators in strategic locations. We don't have quite as many on the road. So we usually only have 2 on the road. We're at home. We have 4 to 6 that are capturing content in a multitude of ways. And then we have a cloud upload system for all of our content that helps us kind of unify it. And then we use a Teams chat throughout the entire game that everybody's shooting ideas. They're like, I got this piece, let's do this. And then we have one source of truth that's kind of posting some of that stuff to the correct locations. And then after the game, right, we have a ton more content that happens, and we have a content coordinator that really helps decide and help where what content. We have about 19 different distribution points for content. And so in-game action, it's a much faster moving, but we've set ourselves up from really a technology standpoint to be able to capture all of these moments quickly, cut them, get them up into the world and into the fans, and really try to be the first to do those things. Sometimes when you're the first, you make mistakes. And so we've had to backtrack some things in the past, but it's also us trying to own our story, celebrate our guys. So that Joe Ingles play is a great one. Joe will probably never take a charge again in the rest of his career, but he took a charge that night, and we wanted to capture and celebrate. And obviously the way we're trying to tell the story about this team is authentically about who they are. They love each other. They are obsessed with playing with each other. They truly support one another. And so that's what that moment was, right? That was the bench reacting. It was them seeing that guy do this thing that they know that he doesn't want to be doing, but he's doing because he wants to win. The other example of that, of having our content in the right place, is when we announced, when Paolo Banchero was announced as an all-star. We had multiple content creators that were in that room while they were all watching it together. And again, the moment we were capturing was that team celebrating his success and him celebrating being a part of that team. And so those are kind of the moments where we're really wanting to get behind. And that's the story that we're hoping fans are seeing, is how much this team is really rallying around one another.
Yeah, I think it's always fascinating that, you can't create a piece of content that you haven't captured. And so that workflow of getting people, hey, we know, TNT are covering it, and we know that there's a vision, like what can we do that's different, unique. I think the NBA does a great job in allowing, your content team, different access, but that, hey, capture it. And then, yes, there's a lot of stuff. Then the piece comes, the workflow of someone has to decide and where it goes, how it gets used, whether it's has to be done now or this one can breathe a little bit and be posted later and those kind of things. They're the bits that I love working with teams, but like it's that capture point, and I guess giving them, this is the point of view, whether it's we want our fans to feel like they're at the game or we want our fans to be turning up to the game because they're missing these things, is really vital. And that's what, those little moments get added up. That's what makes the playoff run. That will make that next moment that will become your nostalgia marketing in 15 years' time, where people are looking back at this team.
Yes, exactly. It's exciting.
So, Shelly, I really appreciate you coming on. I want to get to the Sports Geek Closing 5. Do you remember the first sports event you ever attended?
Yes. I don't know if I remember the team name, but I actually grew up in Oklahoma City with my dad, and I think we lived there till I was 8 or so. And we used to always go to what I believe were the 86ers AAA minor league baseball game in Oklahoma City. And my memory is not necessarily of the game, but they had a hill in the outfield. And I will never forget rolling down the hill constantly throughout the game. Like that's my memory of my very first sporting event was those minor league baseball games in Oklahoma City.
That's early fan engagement. We're now seeing, stadiums change to have, playgrounds in the stadium and those kind of things.
Right.
Do you have you've been to a lot of sports events. Do you have a favorite food when you're going to a sports event or a favorite food memory?
Yeah, I know. So when I'm going, I'm typically like going as a working fan. So I don't always like eat. I'm there usually with clients. And so I'm not always eating. But my favorite like food experience at a sporting event is going to Chicago Cubs games, getting a loaded hot dog and a beer. So I don't even drink beer, but when I go to a Chicago Cubs game, it's just part of the experience is that you're having a beer and a hot dog. And so that is like the food memory for sports. For us in Orlando, we have so many great food options. And my kids, so I have two girls that are 7 and 4, and we bring in a lot of local food vendors, and we have this one mini donut maker, and that is by far our favorite. It's this little stand, and you go have these mini hot off the oil donuts with Oreos and confection sugar, and it's like delicious. So that's probably my favorite Orlando concession item.
I'm sure the kids are bouncing off the wall after a big serve of mini donuts, but that's also part of the experience of going to a game.
Exactly.
What's the first app you open in the morning?
Oh, Outlook, mail, unfortunately.
It is a bit that way sometimes.
Did I get anything overnight?
Yeah, exactly. What's the first fire I have to put out this morning? Is normally the case. Is there someone that you follow, and it might be an author, it might be someone that you follow on social, or a colleague or a former colleague that you follow, and that the podcast listeners should give a follow to?
So I saw this question and I had a couple of things that I wanted to call out here. So one, on Instagram, I followed Together, which is the women's sports brand that was started by Alex Morgan and a couple of other female athletes. That is a really good follow, specifically if you're passionate about the growth of women's sports. They focus only on women's sports stories. They're a huge media company right now. So Together with an X as the last E. And then I was going to mention a couple podcasts that I listen to that I really, really love. So Pivot is one that's in the tech and marketing business space with Kara Swisher and Scott Galloway. It's a really good podcast, keeps you up to date on all things tech and marketing. And then from a basketball standpoint, I love Old Man and the Three with JJ Redick. And it really, though I work in basketball, I never played basketball, so I don't necessarily fully understand like the X's and O's. And he is deep into like explaining the game. And so I learn a lot from that one. And there's a lot of really great relevant content about the NBA on there.
And it's really interesting. I mean, JJ's now doing that effectively a live show with LeBron and really going to that next level. And, the basketball nerds are really nerding out, but it's also opening up, I guess, what that player media piece really does look like, and sort of, a little bit more unfiltered. So it's going to be interesting to see how that develops. Have you
listened to that one yet?
I've listened to it I'm getting the hype clips from it, and listen to one in full, but it is completely different from a media landscape, and really good on JJ for getting it up and running.
Yeah, you have to know basketball or want to be learning about basketball to listen to that podcast. I'm like, what? Split action? What are we talking about?
Yeah, it is another completely another language, and you're sort of like, well, I can sort of know most of it, and then I find out a little bit more. But I think that's the longer education piece, and it's going to be interesting to see if that vernacular and more of that conversation becomes more normalized and becomes more media, and your team might be explaining those things to Magic fans so they better understand. So it's going to be interesting to see if more people dive in and lean into that content, because a lot of the world is copying what other people are doing, and if that is working, we might start seeing more of that sort of more high end, knowledge type content coming out. Lastly, what social media platform is your MVP? And so you can answer this personally, but then also what's the platform that's winning for the Magic?
Performing? Yeah. For me, it's probably Instagram. I probably look at Instagram the most, and specifically stories. I don't look at the feed all that much anymore, which I think is probably the way the world is going and the way the algorithms are driving you. And then for the Magic, I would say the top 3 performing for us right now, YouTube is doing extremely well from a growth perspective. YouTube has been fascinating in how, because it's now on every smart TV, about 50% of people are watching it from their living rooms. And so the content that we're creating is a little bit different. We're stitching together the best Markelle Fultz highlights for an hour, right? And the viewership is just continuing to grow. The algorithm is kind of feeding that very heavily. So YouTube's performing well. TikTok continues to outperform from an engagement perspective and follower growth. And I think TikTok's still figuring out their paid advertising approach, and we're kind of dipping our toe in the water there. And then Instagram is probably the third that's performing the best. We're on pretty much everything. From a Magic standpoint, we're kind of everywhere. But I would say those are the ones that I think are the most engaged, most followed, and that we're finding the most growth and success with.
Yeah, YouTube. I definitely think the advent of the smart TV and YouTube just being there as stock standard has really skyrocketed, I guess, the usage, but then also it just widened the demographic completely. Like
Right.
Now that more streamers, and again, I'll have to fact check myself, but I did see someone say more people are watching YouTube on smart TVs than Netflix, which
That's
which
crazy.
just sort of no one sort of looks. It does make sense, but it doesn't also, you don't think of YouTube as a streamer, but, they
Right.
are. And then, more and more content is leaning there. The algorithm is very good. It's, more short form, but, 10 to 30 minutes is no longer short form. So, and it has been a space where sport has been trying to figure out where it fits again in the, the rights and what you've been able to do. I know, a lot of the clubs had, there's things you couldn't do on YouTube. So it was a lot of restrictions, but as that has sort of loosened up, and people are taking YouTube as a longer storytelling platform, it's sort of really blossomed.
Yeah, for sure.
So lastly, Shelly, if people have listened to this podcast and enjoyed it, and I hope they have because I have, what's the best way for them to reach out and say thank you? What's the best platform?
Yeah, LinkedIn is probably the best to reach me. I'm Shelly Wilkes. Pretty easy find to shoot me a message there. Not always the most active on posting there, but I certainly look and engage with people who reach out from YouTube or from LinkedIn. So,
not a problem. Well, thank you very much for coming to the podcast. Say good day to Jay from me, and hopefully, I was actually in Orlando for the Pro Bowl recently, so unfortunately, I didn't get to catch up with anyone. I was too busy going from Pro Bowl event and flag football events in what we do with the NFL. So, but hopefully, I'll be back in your part of the world soon.
Awesome. So nice to meet you. Thank you so much.
Looking to help your digital or sponsorship team? Book in for a Pick My Brain session with Sean Callanan to help your team level up. Book now at sportsgeekhq.com/pickmybrain.
Thanks again to Shelly Wilkes. As I always say, if you could reach out to either my LinkedIn post or Shelly to say, hey, I listened to the podcast and I got a lot of value. I really do appreciate the time that my guests take in sharing their insights. And for Shelly, I really enjoyed the conversation around the career journey and taking on those opportunities, especially going from sales to game presentation to then take on that larger role in a smaller team with Lakeland and then coming back to Orlando. For me, sports is very much about embracing that journey and not really focusing on, hey, I really want to be in this specific role or this specific team, because you don't actually know until you sort of dive in and get into the roles. I mean, if I look at my own backstory, I was a geek before I was a sports geek. I had a long career in IT, and I was sort of dabbling in sport. I had a passion to get into sports, but not quite knowing where. I dabbled in game presentation. I did some volunteer work with the Melbourne Tigers, even like a lot of people, pitching in where needed, and that entailed me wearing a inflatable sumo wrestling suit at a halftime entertainment once. I also produced a TV show with the Western Bulldogs with local Channel 31 here, and then one of the things I did in my IT career was also a data research project with the Mountain West Conference. I've had Dan Butterley on the podcast talking about it, and that was all things I did before I even started Sports Geek in 2019. And since then, even the Sports Geek offering and what we're doing has changed from early on helping teams and leagues understand the social media landscape and learning Twitter and Instagram and what's a hashtag and how do we engage, to helping those teams develop with content ideation and also digital team development, to then how do we get the cheeks on the seats, some of the things we talked about today with Shelly in ticket sales, and how do we leverage those ad platforms to sponsorship valuations and activations, and how do you make money from digital, which is really where the digital dollars process comes from. And so much like Shelly, I've definitely enjoyed the journey so far and really excited on where Sports Geek is headed soon. So as always, you can always reach out to me, Sean at sportsgeekhq.com. Thank you very much for taking the time to listen and supporting our efforts. Until next episode, my name is Sean Callanan, and you've been listening to Sports Geek.
Do you get Sports Geek news? Sean Callanan analyzes the latest sports business articles for you weekly. Sign up at sportsgeekhq.com. Want to help drive more revenue from your digital efforts? Book a time for a call. Go to sportsgeekhq.com/phone call.